Mr. President, I have for your consideration Admiral Matthew Nathan, the candidate for an honorary degree. I invite Dr. Adams to the podium to do an introduction of Admiral Nathan.
Healer, leader, magician, disaster management expert, academic, carpenter, plumber, humorist, internist, husband, father, friend. But there's a story about each one of those descriptive titles, I assure you. Vice Admiral Matthew L. Nathan, 37th Surgeon General of the United States Navy and Chief of the Bureau of Medicine and Surgery, a three-star admiral that was selected at a time of crisis in direction, focus, and financial constraint because of his reputation to clearly evaluate, form a coalition, and execute a plan. Unfortunately, in the military, at the rank of Vice Admiral, this requires unique skills when dealing with four-star generals, admirals, congressmen, and the other two Surgeon Generals of the Army and Air Force. And if you don't think that's egomania squared, I'm here to tell you otherwise. As you can see from the printed biographical sketch in your program, Matt has been here, there, and I assure you, everywhere. He began on an isolated base at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. For that, he was rewarded by a tour in London, England, where he dealt with the Soviet Eastern Bloc nations in military-to-military engagements. He became such an expert in English that they sent him to Japan with the 7th Fleet to see what he can do with kanji. It was from Japan that I picked Matt to be my executive officer in Portsmouth, Virginia, at the busiest naval hospital in the military, I think. If it isn't, we'll make it today. By this time, he was willing to work for anyone in the States, even me. What brought Matt to the Naval Hospital and subsequently to the Office of Surgeon General was his clear understanding of isolated duty stations, forward deployed military officers and enlisted going in harm's way, academic insight from the Industrial College of the Armed Forces, and even surviving Hurricanes Ivan, Dennis, and Katrina while serving in Pensacola, Florida as the hospital commander. I kept him pretty busy, but somehow he managed to rip out his entire bathroom and half of the rest of the house and rebuild it while still putting in 12 hours days in the hospital. I think he accomplished this using his magic, which he learned in high school and subsequently used in college and frequently at command performances such as this. Do we get a magic trick today? But I close this recommendation in support of his receiving the honorary degree of human letters because he's never lost sight of his duty to the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, and their families, whether he was a lieutenant in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, or the Surgeon General of the United States of the Navy. Dean Crone, I give you my colleague and friend, Vice Admiral Matthew Nathan.
Now, Mr. President, it is my pleasure to present Admiral Nathan as a candidate for the degree of Doctor of Humane Letters, honoris causa.
Up there, Admiral. Thank you, Dean. Now, by the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees, I hereby confer upon you, Vice Admiral Matthew Nathan, the degree of Doctor of Humane Letters, honoris causa, with all the rights, honors, and privileges appertaining thereto. In witness whereof, I cause you to be invested with the hood appropriate to your degree and grant you this diploma. That's That's great. Thank you, Admiral. Your turn.
President Pomerantz, Chairman Bond, Dean Crone, Dean Bondry, and especially to the outstanding faculty, trustees, leaders, mentors, graduates, and today's graduates and your families. This honorary degree means something very special to me. It now means I'm an alumnus of this institution, so I want you guys out there, don't screw it up. I have a reputation to uphold now. I am so excited to be here. I thank Admiral Adams, Dr. Adams, for that wonderful introduction. I owe a great deal of my career to him. I believe I was asked here today not because I'm smarter than any of you. I am not. I have been engaged in the practice and the teaching of medicine for over 35 years, and perhaps I can offer some observations. I've heard some inspirational stories of some of our graduates, some who came from abroad and had to insert themselves into the American way of life and the American culture. I grew up a native Californian, and as far as intellect goes, I'm humbled by yours. When I took the English achievement test in high school to gain college entrance, I scored so low that my father suggested I apply to colleges as a non-English speaking student. That would be the only way to explain those scores. But I persisted and went on and did well. And as I look at this point in my life, I would ask you to savor the journey. You are so focused on the destinations at this point. You go through secondary school and college, and you go through your medical degrees, and you go through your residency, and you want to become staff, and you want to become this. And there's nothing wrong with that, with having a trajectory. But savor the relationships that you forged along the way, and savor the relationships you'll make in the future. Keep your eye on the prize. Well, what is the prize? That's not something anybody up here on the dais can tell you. That's something you have to decide for yourself. I would tell you that when you're young, you often start out trying to either create a goal of making money or making a name. But after a while, you start to appreciate and you start to center your life on making a difference. You start to appreciate that you can turn the tide. We are so excited about the quality, the energy, the altruism that you hold as you go out to make a difference. Medical care, and I know there will be those of you contributing as physicians and those of you contributing as scientists, is not necessarily at its perfect equilibrium right now. Our country spends more per capita than any other country in the world, and yet we don't rank in the top 10 in many indicators of health and wellness. Well, I've seen your curriculum. I've seen where the gravitas is of your education, and it is focused primarily on those. You can make the difference. When you inherit the watch from those of us who have stood before, you can turn health care into health. You can turn it into wellness. You can create an environment and an atmosphere of living well and being well and of living your lives in longevity and quality. So I'm the Surgeon General of the Navy, and you would think that I live by all those mottos. I wish I could say I did. My wife started to worry about my exercise, so she bought me a Fitbit. You wear it on your side, and it tells you how many steps you take every day. And I would come home from work, and she would regularly police me and see if I'd done my requisite 10,000 steps. And I'd get chewed out if I hadn't. So I eventually would go to work, and I would find some guy going for a run, and I would say, "You want to make $5?" But please don't share that with her. You inherit a healthcare system that is as advanced as any in the world. You have tools at your disposal now which will give you the opportunity to make tremendous difference in lives. If you look at the history of medicine, if you look at the great game changers, the tectonic plates that changed healthcare in the world, most medical historians would start with antibiotics and understanding infectious disease and the germ theory and vaccinations, and lives that were lost began being saved in thousands. If you look at the next, most people would agree it would probably be anesthesia, the ability to operate on the body at leisure. In the Civil War, where ether wasn't always in ready supply, most people measured the competence of their surgeon by how fast he or she sawed. Because if you had to amputate a limb, sometimes it was done without anesthesia. So anesthesia changed that tide. Next, most would say it's imaging. It's the ability to look inside the deepest recesses of the body without having to open it, without having to do explorative surgery. And I think we're now in the great shift of molecular and genetic medicine. We are now making diagnoses and we are now making therapeutics based on gene theory and immunogenics. We've seen world-famous people who have undergone serious prophylactic surgeries simply because they had a blood test done and it showed they were at a high risk for a certain illness or disease. This is the real deal. I believe we're heading into the next great panacea of medicine, which is going to be virtual care, the one that you are already comfortable with and the ones that you will be immersed in. The ability to take remote care of patients, to be able to communicate with them, diagnose them, craft therapeutic plans via telemetry, via a smartphone, via transducers. And you will do amazing things for people you won't ever see. We already have, on our hospital ships, we have video cameras in our operating rooms, so that when we're off the coast of Brazil performing an operation, we can go to my office back in DC and watch the operation and perhaps give some pointers on scene. But as great as these advances are, they tend to remove you from the human condition. They tend to remove you from the human spirit. So it is essential that your generation, as it harnesses and leverages this amazing technological prowess, continues to center itself on the humanity of medicine, the humanity of being a caregiver. A caregiver does not go to a store to buy care. A caregiver provides that care from within. When I want to text my daughter, who is 17, to come downstairs to dinner, notice I said I don't call her, I text her. I text her because she's got the iPhone in one hand, she's got the laptop in the other, she's got the Dr. Dre buds in her ears, she's watching television, and she's tweeting. And when she doesn't come down, I text her in all caps. And then she texts back in all caps. Okay. Life is changing as we know it for communication. But you must recognize that there is an unassailable bond between you and those you care for. I think that we all recognize that medicine is still a very human profession. It is a profession. It is not a trade. It is not a craft. It is a profession. And as such, you must be leaders. You must be role models. You will have many opportunities in your future where you will come to an intersection of right or wrong. It could be personal. It could be professional. It could be financial. Choose right. Be that role model. There is always someone watching you. Maintain your integrity above all else. St. Francis would say that when we leave this world, we do not leave with what we have taken. we leave with what we have given. Make that difference. Give of yourself. Be memorable. You may not be able to change the entire dynamic, but to the world you may be just but one person, but to one person you may be their world. You may not always be the answer. You may not always be the cure, but you can always be there. So I would simply close by saying, I hope no matter what intersection you have, be it as you pursue your sciences and your graduate degrees, or as you pursue the art of medicine, you recognize that you must endure and embrace the human relationship, the human spirit. You must fight through technology at times to give people the most essential essence of what they want. When you stand at the bedside of a child that is 80 weeks old, fighting through a catastrophic illness, or at the bedside of a patient who is 80 years old, who is passing from this earth, or on the battlefield, where you lie next to a mortally wounded warrior, and you squeeze their hands, and they squeeze back. It is not to tell you I am still alive. It is not to tell you I am still with you. They squeeze back to tell you, please don't let me take this journey by myself. Please be there with me. You may not be the cure, but you can be there. I finish by using this example, although it's a dramatic one, to remind myself every day, no matter what context I see a patient in, be it an office or a boring setting or a routine setting, my job is to be their fullest and most aggressive and ferocious advocate, regardless of whether it's simply fulfilling a prescription or whether it's trying to chase down illness, pain, or injury. Navy Corpsman, the most decorated rating in the United States Navy, has been for 200 years. Have received more Medal of Honors than any other group in the military. And most people, when you ask them, why do you think that's so, they will tell you the following, and they're correct. They will say, well, the Navy Corpsman must run out in the heat of battle to support the fallen Marine or the fallen sailor or soldier or airman. And as such, they put their lives in great risk as they do, because when everybody else is ducking for cover, they have to run out to the dangerous area and administer care. But ladies and gentlemen, that's only really part of it. The reason so many pay the ultimate sacrifice, the reason so many are sometimes grievously wounded, is because they do something we do not ask them to do. They do something we do not teach them to do. Because of their ethos, because of their legacy, as they care for the patient, they instinctively put themselves between the patient and danger. They decide where the danger is coming from, and they move themselves in between that and their patient as they care for them. They live the credo that before I will let pain, illness, or injury get to those I care for, it will have to go through me. We can do that in every walk of our life, not just with patients, but with those we cherish and those we honor, our parents, our children, our spouses. Honor yourselves, honor your families, honor your profession. I have talked to a few of you. You are the best trained, most spirited, most enthusiastic, most promising generation of healthcare givers and scientists I have ever seen. I am so proud to be a part of this milestone where you will go out and do amazing things. Thank you very much.